The film has two worlds. I have a playground where I can be experimental with one character who inspires me to do that, Anurag's world, and then I have another character in Vikram's world who is the other side of the story. I have other things to explore on that realm. Aitonde's music, I knew I could go far. I could go where it takes me, and then see. We watched all our decalogues and Kurosawa's dreams and all running around the house and all of that. So I didn't understand the language. The music stayed with me a lot. Pum, pum, pum. Just those few notes. What is that instrument? I'm thinking, what kind of bell is it? Is it Joltarongo? What is it? And realizing that I don't have anywhere to see. I wish he was there so I could go up to him and ask him, how did you create the mood of Monihara? I love solitude, but I should have somebody to whom I can say how sweet solitude is. Yeah. So there is a thin line between loneliness and solitude. You see that there's a reason why Paul McCartney is Paul McCartney. This guy is constantly making music. Constantly. He's the only one who's just constantly making, John is smoking or talking to Yoko and other are playing but goofing around. I'm not trying to say who my favorite Beatle is, hint hint, but the lesson in life is that you're just constantly, doing something. Talks about present times, how if you can separate politics and life and poetry and music and existentialism, then it doesn't work. It's all together. La la la. 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 La la la.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Indigenous Interviews. Today I'm talking to the very warm and very brilliant Olokananda Dasgupta. We'll primarily talk about music, but we'll also talk about a lot of other things. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad that we are finally doing it because
yes.
we had been talking for a while.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
As soon as I entered your lovely little studio, I was reminded of Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own, and the fact that such a space is important to be able to create, especially for a woman. So I'll start with asking you this: how important is that space to you? Or to put it differently, how important is solitude in general in your creative process?
It's a beautiful question. I've never been asked that, but it's very, it's of course from my personality, if I have to go by what I like, solitude is of primary importance. There is a direct connection between production and productivity and work and solitude. But there is a, who is it that said that I love solitude, but I don't remember the exact lines, but I love solitude, but I should have somebody to whom I can say how sweet solitude is. Yeah. So there is a thin line between loneliness and solitude. So I have created a space where I will have everyone and everything outside, but I will be in my own room, and it takes me back to my childhood. Everything takes me back to my childhood. Growing up also, if you know, in our kind of Bengali households, or there was this rule that you're not going to shut the door.
Yeah.
You have your room. A lot of us, we had my joint family from my father's side, so all of us used to go to Howrah a lot to visit them. But otherwise, we were just the four of us. So there was never a designated room. But then when we started to enjoy our own spaces, there was always a rule that don't shut the door. And I was studying piano. We started learning the piano at a very young age. To practice the piano, we had to shut the door. So that was allowed. So I also grew up wanting to really be alone in a crowd, knowing that there's going to be doorbells from morning till night, and there's uncles coming, aunts coming, Baba's production people coming, random people at the table eating, everyone's eating, it's an open house sort of a thing. But I will have my own room. So my excuses became practice korchi ekhon, don't disturb me, I'm practicing. So that's why I started becoming very used to playing music only when I'm alone in the room.
So how did you start with your music journey? So you were studying English literature,
Yes.
and how did music happen?
So music started with piano, with Baba putting both Didi and us to for sending us to get lessons initially from somewhere, and then we joined the School of Music, and then I found a beautiful person called Fauzia Marikar, who's a old Sri Lankan lady. She's 87 now. Just amazing, really. So before I felt that we learned by rote a lot, but with her it was sort of analyzing everything. So it started with piano. It started with Ma was Rajinikanth Tushan's granddaughter, so there was a lot of music there, music playing at home. So to be honest, music meant piano and piano performance mainly. So that's how it started. Then by the time I was in college, my fear of playing the piano became very heightened. It was always there, because we had to take these exams, So I got very scared of that. So playing the piano, I didn't have the confidence to play in public. Playing the piano became a scary thing. Then, sometime in college, when we were doing, when we were studying films, we had film studies. So when sort of the boundaries between the worlds of art started to blend, and we realized that there is no music without Kavita, and there's no music without poetry, there's no poetry without cinema, it's all related, there's nothing without dance. Then, in the interdisciplinary world, I started feeling more comfortable in exploring composition. I always wanted to compose. I just wasn't sure that is. I think Baba wanted me to be a classical pianist, and that obviously didn't happen because I wasn't good at it. But I was very interested in the craft. I just wasn't the right person to perform. So then I realized that I have to study this. I have to study, I have to explore more because I listen a lot, I want to know. So then I started studying music, graduation in music. And then I was told by my teacher, a professor, Karen Burke, who actually told me that it's okay if you can't perform. There's no problem. You have to keep it as an instrument for your courses, but you can do other things. So for the first time, the weight was lifted that, oh, I can compose. I don't have to, and I can compose behind closed doors. Because I was so used to hours and hours of rehearsing, practicing alone in a room. So that everything kind of came together, and I found that I can do this. I can be a music enthusiast. I can compose, I can listen, I can write about it. I don't have to be the best performer. So when that knowledge happened, it was really nice. That was the golden years where, a lot of exploring happened, and I knew that I don't have to practice all the time because I will not go to a certain point because I didn't have the skills. So that's when the composition started.
So you started composing when you went to Toronto after that?
No, before that I would do that at home on the piano, and then we had these cassette recorders. We had one, so I would record some at home, but never enough to store it or to remember it. Then in college, I started to come back from class very quickly home because we had this computer in Baba's office, Barite. At home we didn't have a device. So I used to listen to a set of MP3s, and I used to also compose. So back then it started, the seed of composing. But actually when I went to study, that's when I took a class in composition. So the sharing bit happened then. And the real discovery that, okay, I'm able to do this, I'm able to do different styles, I'm enjoying the process. I'm not scared anymore to show my work. I'm not scared to sit at my piano stool. My hands are not shaking for a change. So that realization in composition happened when I was studying music.
And those initial years, your college years, they were very different, right? Because you were not immersed into the world of commission projects.
Right.
So you were composing for yourself.
Right. Oh,
and what were some of the inspirations or triggers for those compositions?
Well, then when I was studying music, the inspirations were because we had some very interesting courses where it wasn't just Western classical. I mean, my knowledge compared to others, the people who have studied it, people who have studied it from their childhood, my knowledge compared to them was much, much, much less. I was exposed to only so many kinds of Western classical or music that wasn't just immediately playing. Although we had access, Baba had gramophones and all of that, we had vinyls at home. So once I went to study within the courses, you had to listen to a lot of different kinds of music. You know, we exams where you have to come up, tell the right rhythm. Stuff like Kashmir would be played. The introduction of Kashmir would be played. Mauritanian music would be played, and a lot of Western classical with different eras: Baroque, classical, romantic, modern, atonal, impressionistic, all of that. So being in an atmosphere where I'm also not fearing education. We've all gone through the system of education where we have feared that also. So with literature also, there was that fear was gone a little bit because you started to enjoy what you're studying, and then with music, that fear also kind of wasn't there anymore because you're really enjoying the process. So though that listening, getting introduced to other composers that I hadn't really explored, John Cage, Philip Glass, all of these strange. I wasn't really into that much rock or grunge. Getting exposed to all of that, trying to figure out ways to listen to things that, going to the sound library, all of that. Back then, it was world music, if I can use that term loosely, and a lot of classical music that shaped my initial composition styles and initial statements that I wanted to make. That shaped it in the beginning.
And you were also dancing. So, and Odissi music is it's a very different kind of music. That's
Right.
also something that I'm sure you would be listening to a lot because you're practicing.
Right.
So did that also have an influence on your music?
Oh yes, I started to use the pakhawaj a lot, and I started to use. There is one thing that I had done for the Republic Day about 2-3 years ago. I remembered the bowls of all the Basant Pallavis and the botus. So those bowls came in handy in trying to create music, because my relationship with dance is very deep. Deep, namely because it's unrequited. It's one-sided, because when we were growing up, Baba wanted us to learn piano, and Ma wanted us to learn dance. So I was doing Odissi, and Didi was doing Bharatnatyam. So, and the Odissi, I really took to it. Really, really loved doing that, and loved every bit of it. Was good at it also. I remember I was good at it back then. I rarely say if I'm good at something, but I remember that the feeling of not having any fear of doing exams, and we performed also. After that, but we soon realized that with school pressure and with piano, we cannot do all three. So we chose piano. But dance was always, Ma was always trying to make ways of balancing music and dance. I would later take these summer workshops that was offered in Kolkata. In music, subconsciously, whatever you've loved and whatever has affected you positively or negatively is what constitutes your work. But even till today, I have a very strong affinity towards Odissi, and really wish that I could get back to it and want to, and see if I can combine both the worlds, perhaps for something for Baba, and practice again and play some piano without my hands shaking, and something for Ma, and continue with Odissi. So let's see.
I'm sure that will happen.
And you are a Kathak dancer.
Not a dancer, I dance with. Yeah.
But I saw some of your images, look beautiful, very graceful.
The shift to Mumbai, I think those years you were assisting on Udan.
Yes.
Then Shala happened.
Yes.
Then I think around that time you were also working on some of your father's short films and documentaries.
Yes.
So just tell us about this, this finding the ground phase and also the shift to this very overwhelming city.
Yes, so initially there was no plan. Honestly, I had listened to um, the soundtrack. I had watched the movie called Amir and listened to the soundtrack a lot while I was studying, and I loved the songs. Ha Rahem, Chakkar Ghumiyo, Ek all these three songs were really stayed with me, and I started to realize that these kind of I might have a place in Mumbai, because before that I didn't think that I would have a voice. I felt that I might not fit in the kind of stuff that I want to compose. But after listening, there was Sneha Khanwarkar's music
Yeah.
also. Amit Trivedi and Sneha, Rahman was always there. It was a omnipotent, omnipresent figure. But after listening to these composers and their songs, I've started to feel that okay, perhaps I might be able to do something which is, which could work for me, and so that's how I got interested. That okay, maybe I should meet Amit Trivedi. That's how it started with Bombay. I didn't want to move or anything, and I started after finishing my studies. I did a couple of documentaries for Baba. One was on BE College. Then after coming to Mumbai, when I was studying music, I really wanted to compose, and I wanted to feel I wanted to know how it felt to professionally compose. But I was a student and I was very shy about showing people my work. So I caught hold of some filmmakers from the film major department, from the film department, especially the Spanish filmmaker called Sixela Franco. So I had met a lot of directors. So I went up to her. She was also a student. So students have to do their end of the year diploma
Yes,
film.
yeah.
So I would go and approach and tell them, do you want a composer for it? So that way I'll also get the hang of it. That's how I started. So I used to go and approach them and do their 2 or 3 people I did it for. Sixela Franco ended up being amazing human being, amazing, a very, very cool film. She shot in Spain, Galicia. It was hand processed. So then take two to me coming to Mumbai. I was assisting Amit on Udan and No One Killed Jessica and all of that. Then Sixela told me that I have a friend, Diego. He is going to Mumbai to work on a film. Can you show him around? So I met him in Mumbai, and he said, "Oh, there is this Marathi film called Shala that I'm doing. I think they're looking for a composer." So I was still very scared about starting my own thing because I was assisting someone. But I took the chance and I was like, yes, sure, I'll meet them. And I played the director, whatever I had done. So then I got Shala. So the connection is strange. There's started with Sixela in
Yeah.
York University. So that was my first film. That's how it started. And then while doing Shala, I did Baba's 13 Stories, Rabindranath Tagore Golpo, and this film called She, Wo in Hindi. So that was the initial years of me working in Bombay. Still the golden years, because it was very new and very exciting, and again there were no stakes. I still just wanted to. I had this very school child vibe that I have to finish it on time. I have to submit it properly. So I could do that part, and started enjoying it also. Then I think after Shala came BA Pass, and then Baba's Anwar Ka Jab Kissa, which was one of my favorite films by him. Incredibly quirky film with Nawaz. Back then, I think he wasn't that huge, but he was so brilliant in that film. That had 2 songs, Didi Rajeshwari Dasgupta, she's my lyricist. She wrote the 2 songs over there. Then stakes started to get higher and higher, because Baba was the biggest critique of my work and would say stuff like cancel it all, Jogon Shop Baje, start from scratch. So then had that was lucky enough to have that interaction with him, work in that capacity. I think my first film where I felt that this is completely exactly my zone, was Anwar.
Okay.
And then came Trapped,
Yes.
Vikram's Trapped. And when I was doing Trapped, I was, I was really affected by sound. So I recorded a lot of sounds and used there. So even then the stakes were low. After that, Sacred. Sorry, I keep slipping into Bengali because we are
That's fine.
chatting in Bengali. After that came Sacred Games, when the stakes got high.
How did
So-
Sacred Games come to you?
Because of Vikram, because with Vikram I had done Trapped, and I had done a bunch of his commercials, short film, long commercials, almost like a short film. I had done a couple or three or more, I think, with him. So we had worked consecutively on projects. Uran, if you also consider, because I was assisting Amit,
Yeah.
but that's when it started. So right after Trapped, within a year, Sacred Games happened. 2017, I think, end, or 2018, something like that. It started. We started working on it.
What is it about working with Motwane that makes it so special that you work on so many projects together?
I think well, you'll have to ask him what he feels about me. But I feel like with him, it is the fact that there is a silent knowledge that he has. Like, he's very silent. He only says what needs to say. But I think his knowledge in film music, not just film music, music in general, is very sharp, and it's esoteric. It's not like he knows about everything, but whatever he knows, he's very sure about what he wants or what he doesn't want, and he has a vision. And there is, because he is a visionary, he can also imagine that this is a scratch that will become like that. He also allows me to express myself, because I have that first stage where I get very scared and intimidated and feel like I have to prove myself. So I'll do all kinds of things, bizarre things also. And he would listen to it and sort of let me have that phase, which is a very, of course, there must be a connection somewhere. He must have understood that I have to let Aloka do this. And I also understood that there's a reason why he wants what he wants. There is also, on top of everything, all of this is this technical precision, which I really admire. His sound knowledge of the technicalities, the organized way with which he wants to approach it, all of these things, because I'm very scatterbrained most of the times, and so to have somebody who can almost virtually collect my musical thoughts, omit what's not needed, take what he can see has potential, and then help me create it, is a big deal. I feel in that way I've been very pampered by that. And of course, he would also outright refuse and say this is not working. And exchanging music.
Okay.
It's a very controversial thing, reference music. People think that you don't imitate it. It is to understand the world, that if you've read something, understand what the world that this piece of cinema belongs to, and also exchange each other's playlist. It's a very interesting thing, exchanging clips, exchanging playlists, understanding what he likes. So all of this, I think, plays a very important role. He allowed me to go through all these phases, and if I would make a scratch for him, that's completely, it's not a real sound. It sounds like it's underproduced. It sounds disorganized, sounds unprofessional. He would understand that it would become that. So there is these things where verbal language wasn't that necessary, because he talks very less. It was also this understanding. So that's how things come together. It's never just one person. Of course, the story, other crew members, sound, all of these things, if all of that comes together, then it makes it even better. And he always has a lot of really great people that he works with.
Yeah.
Trapped Sound and Sacred Game Sound had Anish John, who also did Labor of Loves.
Okay.
He won the national award for that. So he always has these people that you really want to collaborate with and get inspired by.
And if we talk about the music of Sacred Games, that became iconic overnight. What was the brief like? What were the conversations like? How did you decide what elements to put? If you could just take us through the journey of making the Sacred Games music.
So the Sacred Games, because it was very dark, I did not know I had a very very special dark side. I realized that I am getting my natural knack almost was it was far easier for me to understand the darker worlds
Okay.
than it was. And it's hard to explain. It's not that everything that I do has to have murder and horror. I don't mean that, but there's something about the pacing, the world, creating an old world. Sacred Games has its own world, right? It created a world of its own. So that really, basically, it really sung to me when I read it. The read was so immaculate.
Okay.
The writing was so immaculate. I immediately could tell that I would have, I can experiment without being bizarre. I can still, within boundaries, I can experiment. And then came the opening credits. So the opening credits became a summary. You know how it's very difficult to write a summary of a novel, but you can write 10 pages about it. So if you, same with the series, it was 8 episodes, right? First season was 8 episodes. And it was the first of its kind. Before that, we didn't have anything. So I was still so new to the genre, to the actual template of it, the style of it was so new. So intimidating, right? 8 episodes. It's what, about 3.5 films? Something like that. So to be able to summarize it really helped. So we did the opening credits first. And when I got the sound of the opening credits right, then I realized that, okay, this is the palette of the film. And the film has two worlds. I have a playground where I can be experimental with one character who inspires me to do that, Anurag's world, and then I have another character in Vikram's world who is the other side of the story. I have other things to explore on that realm. So immediately the palette became huge. So psychologically, I just started to feel relieved that, okay, my playground is large.
So there was a lot of scope to experiment, and like you were saying, you want to prove yourself. So you had enough scope to do that.
Yeah. I had a lot to say because there's an initial excitement because the story itself is so incredibly, it allows you to go to many places. There is satire, there is real darkness, there is quirk, there is comedy, there are so many, this real life drama. So a lot of it, because I could identify with what was going on in this world, it was so Noah-like also. There was so much, there's also a dialogue where he says, if you want to love Mumbai, then get out at night. So these things spoke to me so much. It's one of those rare moments where every dialogue inspires you, frame inspires you. The separation of the two worlds did not intimidate me at all. It was very exciting. Overall, the project was intimidating, of course, but I knew I could do, like Gaitonde's music, I knew I could go far.
Yeah.
I could go where it takes me and then see. Then Vikram is always there to sort it out and take out the bits that are not necessary and put me in line, lasso me back to line. But I knew that with Gaitonde's world, I could do a lot.
Yeah.
There is a flute piece when he's walks out of, when he has a swag walk out of the first restaurant where he's done his first his chess move. He walks out. I have a very interesting flute piece there, and I wouldn't have used it otherwise had I not known that Gaitonde's world would allow me to do that. So I had so many spaces to experiment, and the opening credits also, the fact that I had a lot of layers there. I had the instruments that worked for me, and it kind of fit the visuals also, So I think all of these, sound also, all of these things really, like I was saying, a lot has to be right for it to. It was one of those projects where every department is inspiring. and I have never really, it's not that I sat down with Sacred Games and chose the key or chose the instrument or chose that, but it kind of automatically started after the opening credits was done. I knew that, okay, this is my palette. I can go far with Gaitonde. I can go some places with Sartaj. And the songs were also used in a way that is my style, songs as scores and different kinds. They were not really similar. They were all very different from each other. There was a Cuckoo's Couplet, which is just 4 lines, I think, 4 or 6 lines, because I often find myself feeling that I love creating songs as well. It's not that I just want to do scores. By scores, I have always thought of it as music. I have never separated, but I've often loved writing, making songs, creating songs. But I found myself not being able to do it in a way that it should be. Like the Antara Mukra chorus. Often it becomes sort of a mix of everything. Or either it's a ballad, or the chorus doesn't come back, or the chorus comes back too many times. So the Sacred Game songs also allowed me to do this. There's snippets of songs, different styles. It is basically the space and the world that the entire narrative created, and the palette was created from the opening credits. So that was the driving factor.
And that was also your first time navigating multiple people. So there's a Netflix, there's a Phantom, there's Kashyap, there's Motfane. There's a lot of people with their opinions. So was it, and you've done that later. You've done that again with Jubilee and Khawf. You have worked on all of these OTT series. But for the first time, was that a lot to handle?
So that absolutely did not happen.
Okay.
Anurag only directed the songs to me that I did for the second season, the 2 songs. And I think Vikram filtered everything, collated everything, and I was just working with him as the showrunner. So I avoided any and every kind of confusion. Strangely, after Sacred Games, a lot of projects I have faced that kind of, a little bit of confusion.
Okay.
But I did not face that in Sacred Games. It kind of, I think he was the ideal. I didn't even know what a showrunner meant. But later on, I realized is somebody who not only has his takes as a director, but has to sometimes remove himself as a director and completely view it as an audience and have really sharp insight into the departments.
Achha, because we were talking about the intro music, tell me how you feel about the skip intro feature in the platform.
Of course, selfishly for my projects, I wish there weren't any. Yeah. Also because I also started watching shows a lot. All of us did when it first came into our lives, and
especially COVID.
Even before COVID, I would say, because it was the first time that you felt like you have a companion and you're okay being alone in this kind of a city life, and all you want to do is come back home and watch your show or movie on your laptop, and very intimate, right? Yeah. I have always watched it on laptop also. We never had a TV in Bombay and all of that. So later on, I started to improvise and started to have more better sound systems and have all the full package. But initially, it was just laptop. So started watching so much and started to put a lot of emphasis on opening credits as a viewer, as an audience, as a listener, and as a composer. So for all my projects, I think series such as Breathe, there was something called Leela. Breathe, Leela. I'm talking about the celebrated ones and the not so celebrated ones. Also, a lot of them. What I don't remember right now, but a lot of series that I have done, I have put a lot of emphasis on the opening credits because the Sacred Games exercise stayed with me. That if I get the opening credits right, that means I have got the palette or the tonality or the soundscape of
and
the film.
And for yourself also, like
and
if
for
you
myself.
Get it right, you also draw from
absolutely
it.
Yeah, namely for myself. And the vested interest that people would also listen to it. So from that angle, of course, I always felt like, oh, I wish we could listen to this whole thing. But then it comes in handy when there are certain annoying opening credits for certain shows and you don't want to listen to it.
Yeah.
That's also happened to me. But otherwise, I love to listen to the whole thing. I even watch end credits of the shows that I watch, not mine, but other shows. I actually look up who's done that, and so because I have done that a lot, so that I wish it wasn't there.
You're
But
also a true blue cinephile who stays till the end credits. then.
yes, because if you like something, it's the only way to find out. Because I also come from that from that phase in time. Sounds like I'm super old, but I'm not. But where YouTube was a discovery in much later in life, so sourcing things, was difficult. So when it became this easy that you can look up the credit, oh, I love the opening thing of this one. Who's composed that? I love this edit. I loved how the poster of it. So who's done the stills for this? So you want to look it up and you want to see what they have done. Mainly when you discover movie and music, it's always where you are positively spiraling for a change and not negatively. And you start with a video of MasterChef probably on YouTube, and you go to Sophia Isella song, Doll People. That's a track that I've been listening to a lot, because one video takes you to the other. And same with movies, you see the credits, you go there, you see how many, the recommendation, the IMDb recommendations, you go there. That's how I discovered many horror that are not the popular kind.
Over the past couple of years, all your major projects are all very different from each other. So there's Sacred Games, there's Jubilee, Ajib Dastans, Khauf,
Yes.
Puraton, all
Yes.
of them very, very different. So what is your process of getting into these zones? So a 50s Bollywood zone versus a horror zone. How do you do that?
I don't normally, it's not like I do a homework in the sense. The biggest homework is listening. Again, coming back to exchanging each other's playlist, which could be completely different from what you're doing, which could not match what you're doing in the end. But you are trying to find as many tangible things, because I am essentially, when I'm composing, I am moved by images. I can read and compose as well. But the actual thing happens when I see it. So in that sense, I think reading about, being very well versed with the script, and like I was saying, the exchanging of the playlist, that is a huge exercise, because you're kind of studying. Your research work is you study the sound palette of this film. Doesn't mean that you can't go beyond it, but you realize what world this film or this series belongs to. There's no preparation. The only biggest preparation that's always happening is listening. You're constantly listening, you're constantly watching. Even if there are visual references, if somebody like Vikram, he would also, send me certain clips of certain films which are available online, and the music there. So you also understand, okay, maybe the visual palette of this movie and that is similar. Perhaps I should go ahead and watch this film.
And Khauf was your first time doing horror. How was the experience?
I was really waiting for it, because I was watching so much horror at one point, and it switched to also unpopular horrors at a point. And I don't know what about that phase in my life where I was getting a lot of comfort from watching horror. My husband Craig would tell me that at night I had to, if there was nothing to watch, then I would listen to the audiobooks, the audio stories, that are there. Some are in Bangla, some are in English. There are some incredible ones. There are a lot of horror short films that are available online. So I would have to watch something. And unfortunately, recently I have lost touch with reading. I used to read a lot of, my fascination with horror started from reading, from initially Bengali, reading in Bangla because I couldn't understand English. And so reading all of those bhuter galpos, in this, there used to be called omnibus. Yeah. So I used to think omnibus is the name of the author. So that happened, and I reading horror, and much later introduced to Stephen King. But initially the Bangla horrors, and your hair would literally, the world that you and your book can do, again, I'm reading, when I read Cough, it did something similar, reading it. So that's why then my relationship with horror changed, where I really felt comfort in it. I had to watch it to be able to, feel at peace, and started to really listen to such potential in scores, such a huge role of sound and music in horror. So much to explore, and realize that, oh, even I have been one of those people who used to think that horror means, loud jump scare sounds and, a lot of that, only to realize that that's not true. And you go back to old horrors also, you go back to Jaws also, and you realize that there is so many ways of expressing horror, so many different kinds. There's orchestration. I mean, Jaws is just two notes. Yesterday I was watching another. They have done so many live concerts for the score of Jaws, such a celebrated score, with one interval and just two notes, played in so many different styles. Horns, French horns, taking over later on. Who would, of course, I don't come from that school of thought that orchestration means too ornate. But still, I thought that, okay, maybe electronic music, screechy, atonal is the only way. But realizing that there can be a lot of poetry in horror music, a lot of orchestration, a lot of different instruments can be used. Going back to the opening of Monihara.
Oh,
the opening, the just the sound, pum 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 pum, just those few notes. What is that instrument? I'm thinking, is it what kind of bell is it? Is it Joltarango? What is it? And realizing that I don't have anywhere to see. I wish he was there so I could go up to him and ask him, how did you create the mood of Monihara? So again, all the worlds came together. The golpo, the story was so moving, the frames were so moving, and the music was so moving. Baje Koruno Shure, who would have thought that using that song, if you think about that Rabindra Sangeet, it's such an odd, minor, modal, if you have to analyze it, it's exactly what it means. It's exactly that kind of a lonely, painful horror. Just talking about it makes my hair stand up. So all of these things was just growing in me more and more. I wanted to explore more and more, see if I could do it. And then Cough happened. And Smita I knew from Sacred Games, because she was one of the writers there as well. Reading it really moved me, really inspired me. And then watching it. Just when I watched, I mean, every frame is like a painting. Pankaj's frames, it's very, very chiaroscuro, very light and shadow, things that he had, poetically created to express the horror. The poetry behind the doctor's character, his zuban is Urdu. He's speaking this, he's called the whatever the place is called, what is it called? Ruhani Dawakhana. Just the name Ruhani Dawa. I wanted to name the doctor's theme Ruhani Dawakhana. But Smita very beautifully renamed all of them because it has to be cohesive. Venom, I think, was the name of the track. The inspiration to, so all of these while I was reading made me feel that there's something, this is a different kind of a horror. It's my kind of a horror. It's got, the message is so subtle. There is nowhere does it seem forced, artificially done, artificially included. Every episode, the narrative is beautifully moving. I really loved the way the portrayal of the evil was. It was my language. It was my horror language. So that moved me. I don't know why I was approached for that. Maybe initially I used to, take these, Craig used to take photos of me with my hair on my face and I would put the caption as got horror, got milk caption, got horror. So like as if I was looking for work. So I don't know why I was approached, maybe because of Trapped, Sacred Games. They were a little darker world, although very different from each other. But perhaps that's why. But and there were experimentations doing the score also, seeing what style works. So that's how Cough happened, and that's another excitement to be able to work on a genre that you've been wanting to explore in your own way.
And were the timelines matching for Cough and Puratan?
Yes,
So Puratan's
it was exactly at the same time.
So Dure is again a pretty happy song.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
cheerful song.
Yes.
So it's balancing both of them.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, Puratan and Cough. I was doing another Hindi film at that time. I was wrapping that up. That was also about a serial killer. It hasn't released yet, and so I was thinking that okay, dark is the mood of the season. Do I really always need to create? Will I only be able to create music if it's dark? Am I not capable of anything light at all? That's not the case. It's basically, I'm interested. I was really sucked into the world of Puratan as well. But yeah, the timelines crossed, and it was in this fun to do that. You switch between different worlds,
Yeah.
and it's not as dramatic as you think it is. It becomes, you immediately get into the mode. You have the initial work that you've done in the project comes in handy. There is a sort of a natural progression to the creation. So, but it's very interesting to have. Normally, I don't, because I get so stressed out, and deadlines and all are a problem. So I wouldn't normally mix a lot of worlds, but here it was a very interesting mixture.
Very interesting. And OTT series versus feature films and short films. So are these composition wise very different ball games? Do you approach them differently? Because you have done a lot of each of them.
Yes, OTT becomes different because of the entire process of it is so different. Complete different different style of pre and post production happens. It's a factory. One goes to the other, goes to the other, and so in that the template of it is different. The involvement of different people is different. So otherwise, to be very honest, I started looking at every episode of a series as one film, because almost like the microcosm and the macrocosm. So within a film, every episode I have to follow the graph. I can't say that this is episode 1. Let me do this. In episode 6, I will come out and do the do the real thing. Every episode is a film for me. So the importance of every episode, the soundscape, the narrative of the music itself within the episode as well as throughout all of it. So these two things I had to balance for an OTT, but it helped when I treated every episode as a film. Film and short film is very interesting. There are times where a short film takes a lot of time for me, and just because it's short, less music, it doesn't, it becomes tougher to say what you need to say at the right time. So in that zone, in that sense, all these three, I try my best to have a homogeneous work pattern. But yeah, the engagement for series becomes different because you are engaged for a very long time. Short films and feature films are more sort of on a similar zone. Commercials is another zone completely. And yeah, series. So I still try to make sense of them all in my own way, and that this is my process. Whatever the medium is, whatever the format is, my process is this. I will create it, I will experiment, I will first construct my thoughts, then come to a conclusion, then record. So that remains the same with every project, no matter what the format is.
I also want to talk about your experiences of working in your father's films. If you look back, how were they like?
Well, of course, now after losing him, it became even more precious. But they were just incredible because you have to understand that you always separate the man from the profession when you're in a family environment. As a daughter, and back when he was first, in his heydays, that phase, I was too young to understand what these films are. But luckily, because all of us, mom, we all of us somehow sort of had a similar affinity towards the world of art, and we didn't have to be prodded for it, or it's not that there was a separate interest or separate effort that went in making us watch his films or understand cinema or understand music. It was all around. So I think very, very lucky and privileged to just have that growing up, you know. Ma was also a poet, and she used to sketch. She used to do these amazing doodles. You know, she used to sketch Baba while he was at work. And she, while sketching, I wish I had those. They're all dog eared, moth eaten, and sort of was these old notebooks that are part of my memory. She used to say that I used to sit on his desk and just watch him write. As a child, you don't do that. You just, you know, you're too restless. But the discovery of his films happened as we grew up, as we started to watch our own films, listen to our own music, connect the dots, connect the world together, further studying films, then getting into watching and consuming as much as we did. We were lucky enough to consume so much. So much was available to us. So by the time I started working with Baba, I had already realized that this is something that is very special. Not and then to see him at work, to see that so much of what he, I mean, other people who have worked on set with him would tell you that a lot of the things he improvises, a lot of the things he come up while working. So you realize his growth, his journey as well. My first film, I think I did the documentaries, Therapy Galpur, with Shay. But the actual experience of a complete experience was Anwar. Because we were all, Didi and I were all very involved from the very beginning. Because Baba had written this story a long time back. He wanted to make Anwar since the 80s. So it was always present in our lives. And then to see it happen. That was a very unique experience, and after that too happened, which was again an incredibly poignant story, incredibly powerful story. And from Tope, his health started to slowly break. So we also saw him battle that and to disregard that and still work. Then Uro Jahat, which was his song was his last film because he was really sick then. So all Urajahaj was also the last film that I watched. The experience was bittersweet. There is so much admiration towards the artist, so much feeling of loss after he was gone. And while working, also so much of it was, regular anger and regular, because he would, like I said, he would just diss a lot of things at that time. There was, forget about special treatment, it was all like, I've recorded things. And he would come and say, this is Jamun, just get rid of all of it. It's like, but I recorded already. You already said that this was okay. Now you're saying, so I would also argue with him. And then it would all come together somehow. I suppose it comes together because of the man and us and the time we've spent. You cannot, the years we've grown up seeing him work. And all of Ma is not there anymore. Ma, Didi and I, all three of us have been witnessing his beginning. When I came into his life, I think that's when his film started to be seen by people. Didi, it was still very stopping and stopping days. So we have seen the man, the artist, the struggling artist. We've seen the entire journey, his different films, his relationship with his own films as well. So it was a beautiful full circle, where I also had problems of creative differences and realizing how ahead of his time he was. There were a lot of things that he needed. I used to work on Logic Pro, and I would sit him down and be like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to give you a visual in a separate format. You have to sit here and figure it out. And if you don't like something, you go there. So he would just figure it out and he would just watch and he would do his own thing and tell me, why don't you use something very electronic, something very atonal over here? Why don't you use that sound over here instead of so really experimental from the very beginning. Before me, there was Vishnudev Rajgupta, was my kaka, my uncle, whose music also I've loved.
Most films have.
All his films and one
Except
of my
Grio Chutrai.
except Griot Chuddho Baba's.
That is
Brilliant. And even I think Thera Baba de la Roche, Baba also did a lot of work on his own. Because he really loved to compose as well. So, and I've loved the music. I mean, I loved the scores of his film. They were so incredible, The Griot Chuddho, that song, the
But we shall overcome
Vishadogam and the whistle.
the whistle.
And the Madhwari. That is such a painful melody, and the visual of going round and round there, two of their worlds, they are trapped in that moment, the music, and it's so hard to get all of these things, but I still found a clip of it, and just watching it after so long, you feel exactly how you felt, back. I was too tiny to remember that. It was all Ma, and Ma used to do his costumes. So it was all Ma and Bidi. From then I used to hear what it was to be on. It was when I used to go on set with him, I used to get bored as a child. So I got all my information from Bidi. We used to work with him as well. So realizing that he has witnessed these kind of music being composed for his film. Chora Chor, also beautiful minimalistic. Flute was my kaka's main instrument. He loved guitar, so he would use the flute a lot. He stayed with me. All of these things really stayed with me. Growing up, nobody told me that you have to listen to scores or anything. Because Baba used to watch a lot of these films with us in the house. There was no bachas, so we watched all our decalogues and Kurosawa's dreams and all running around the house and all of that. So I didn't understand the language. The music stayed with me a lot. So a lot of that, realizing how much in love with music this man is. Sometimes I would wonder if he should have been a musician instead, because there's so much storytelling that he demands.
Does he play
for music? He could play a little bit of the piano, very little, sort of, not too prolific, but he could play. Then he never practiced after that. But he should have. I think if he did that, and if he was able to compose more, he would have felt more complete. Felt like there was an incomplete side. I think that's why we were taught from our childhood. But I realized the emphasis of music in his, not just in his films, in his life. Ma singing, all of that happening at home. We had a teacher who would come and teach English to us, and all of that happened. So we realized that, scoring was really intimidating. I was in awe of the process, of course, loving, and also very hateful, because I felt like, I was told to redo everything. Why is I being extra mean to me because I am doing this? And then very soon the worlds would come together. I would be able to interpret what he wanted to say eventually, thankfully. And that was such a beautiful moment. And every time he was moved, he would be moved to tears. If there's anything that moves in movies and poetry and music, so that was this beautiful joy of never really thinking that I would be able to do that. I would be able to work on its films. But yeah. And now they are obviously more precious, because talking to you about it is all I have. So, yeah.
Griot Chutho music, that film is very precious to me. I have watched it like a million times probably. But every time the music really gets me, because it's brilliant. It's just
The
amazing.
bell is the long. He had a lot of that as a leitmotif multiple times. And so effective, just a bell, a gong.
And that particular scene that you're talking about, the fact that he's walking around this new apartment, John, he used to play the mouth organ where he was lazing around in the union room. He used to play Nishad Overcome, and that same Nishad Overcome we are listening when he's walking around with the new apartment. If we just, there's nothing else that you need to say. It's just that this man has changed. His girlfriend is realizing that this man has completely changed. His ideal person. Yeah. Brilliant.
And that score is in the embrace, and that's the last time we see them.
Yes,
Embrace.
together. And the camera is.
Yeah. Yeah. La 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 what a melody, cute, and the guitar chords in the background. I'm just getting hooks. It's a beautiful, beautiful. What a visionary film! What a powerful film. Talks about present times. How if you can separate politics and life and poetry and music and existentialism, then it doesn't work. It's all together. You cannot separate. As long as you're alive and you have empathy and you feel and you're creating, it's all it all affects you. And that's real creation because you're creating from a personal space. So yeah.
What do you do when you are not composing?
I'm with my cats.
Yeah.
I play a lot with my cats.
How many?
I have 2,
Okay.
but they are a handful. They're always on top of both my speakers. So I tell my production that please credit them as music supervisors, or they will sit on the keyboard because there's no subtlety about attention. So and because I have a lot of friends, I have friends. My closest friends are my college and school friends. Of course, my sister lives here. My nephew, I'm very close to him. I visit them very often. But because I do not really enjoy going out all that much and interacting, so cats are all day just cat stuff. We're just yelling at each other whole day, my husband and I, over whose turn it is to play with the cats. And my cats are not cats. I thought cats were supposed to be independent and sort of not interested in interaction all that much. But they really, I'm surprised they're allowing us to do this right now. Because so yeah, cats and movies, watching movies.
Last question. How much do you compose for yourself now?
Very little. I've just started composing for myself because I think it's very important for my well-being to do that. Because I used to do that. It was fun. It just I have made myself forget it and told myself that 2 different worlds. I'm composing for people, so I have to be scared. But it's not that. You have to, because you're watching so many. You watch the Get Back Beatles documentary. It's been out for a long time. You watched it recently. You see that there's a reason why Paul McCartney is Paul McCartney. This guy is constantly making music. Constantly, he's the only one who's just constantly making. John is smoking or talking to Yoko, and other are playing but goofing around. I'm not trying to say who my favorite Beatle is, hint hint, but the lesson in life is that you're just constantly, doing something and it's not separating the worlds. Which one is for a label? Which one is for them? Which one? Of course, they are singer-songwriters, a different genre altogether. But I need to be able to blend that and to be able to just create because it's good to create. I need to get back to that properly, and I am, and I will.
Congratulations.
Thank
I wish you more music.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you so much.
I have no clue.
1.5 hours. God, that's a long conversation.
Good luck editing
I
it now.
cannot believe it's this long.